Okay, we're good?
All right, so in terms of introduction to this lecture, what is your opinion about why we have an excretory system? Let's first define excretion versus elimination. It's something that people get confused a lot. So, in your words, what's the difference between excretion and elimination? Yeah?
I think excretion is, you can do that with things that aren't waste, right? Like you can excrete sweat, or is that secretion?
So excretion and secretion are different things. Excretion will exit the body. Secretion can be made in exiting a cell but remaining in the body. But let's get to excretion versus elimination. Do you remember elimination from our discussion about the digestive system? Yeah, you do. I saw a yes. Okay, what's elimination? The removal of?
Waste.
Yeah, the removal actually of undigested food. So let's get this definition down. Elimination is the removal of undigested food. And it is a separate concept from excretion. Excretion is the removal of metabolic waste. So in terms of just a starting point, anything that you put into your body in the digestive system that doesn't get broken down and absorbed and assimilated into your body passes through the digestive system and gets eliminated as solid fecal waste, feces, right? Which, by the way, is non-sterile, meaning it's got bacteria, right? So our digestive system has bacteria that help us break down and access our food. That means our feces are contaminated. The urinary system is a separate system that takes metabolic waste. And there's two forms of metabolism we'll talk about. There's catabolism and anabolism. And it takes the byproducts of catabolism and anabolism, those forms of metabolism, and it gets rid of those byproducts. That's excretion. There is no bacteria associated with the excretory system. Which means the urine that is generated via this system is sterile. So if you're in like a really dire situation and you're in the desert and you're about to become dehydrated and you're in super, super high need of water, you could theoretically drink your own urine without getting a bacterial infection. Could you eat your own feces? You could, but it's going to lead to some nastiness, right? Because it's got bacteria associated with it. Urine is sterile unless you have a urinary tract infection, which would be an infection of the actual tract itself. Otherwise, it's sterile. I know there's already 3 questions, so let's go.
So that means that the human centipede can never exist.
Oh, that's way... I'm not even going to repeat that question. All right. Thank you for that strange question. That's not going to be repeated. Yeah, go ahead. So, right, we're talking about an exceptional case, right, where you're at risk of dying due to dehydration. It's not something I'm recommending that you do. It's not a good source of water. But you do excrete water to dilute your waste products, so there is some water associated with it. And then you had a question as well.
Well, I was just going to ask about uric acid.
Okay, so uric acid is something that is generally associated with birds more than it is humans. In humans, I'm going to talk about this, may as well get started on it now. In humans, what is metabolic waste and how does that work? Okay, our metabolic waste is in the form of urea. So that's ammonia that gets converted, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. Birds secrete or excrete their waste as uric acid, right? So when it lands on your car, it actually can damage the paint because it's highly acidic. So that uric acid is associated with birds. We have urea. So let's talk about why we form urea and how that process works in our bodies. Can anyone remember the structure of an amino acid? It's one that you must be able to diagram and explain.
Yes. 2 C's.
Okay, let's talk about functional groups. Give me one important group of an amino acid.
Carboxyl.
A carboxyl group, and that is a double bonded oxygen and a hydroxyl group. Right?
H4OH.
So it's oxygen bonded to the carbon, and then oxygen bonded to the hydrogen. Okay. What about the other group? What's the other important group? The amino group, right? So we've got a carbon here, and a carbon, nitrogen here. So we've got an amino group, and we've got a carboxylic acid. Why is this considered an acid? Because it can donate the hydrogen. Donation of a hydrogen ion to solution is called an acid. All right, here in the middle, we've got a hydrogen and an R group, which is a specific functional group. When you take biochemistry in college, you'll most likely have to memorize the specific functional groups for about 23 different amino acids. And that gets pretty complicated and way beyond what we need to know for this course. So when you're a junior or senior in college and you're taking high-level biochemistry, you'll need to know this specific structure of the R group. And it would take up the rest of this board section. But for now, don't worry about it. Just call it the R group. All right? So every amino acid has this general structure. Anybody know what it's called when you join two amino acids?
Condensation reaction.
Okay, it is a condensation reaction, also known as a dehydration synthesis reaction. Well done, Julie Dooley. Good work. So, how does that work? Looking at these groups, what happens? Yeah?
The OH.
The hydroxyl group?
Yes, the hydroxyl group is going to be lost, and the hydrogen from the amine is going to be lost.
So these combine to form what?
Water,
Water.
and then your carbon is going to bond to the nitrogen.
Right, so now we've got electrons available for bonding here between the carbon and the nitrogen, forming what kind of bond? What kind of bond is this? A peptide bond, right?
Oh,
And when you join a lot of these amino acids together, what's the prefix for many?
Poly.
Poly. So a polypeptide, also called a protein. Right? Dehydration synthesis reaction, water as a byproduct, peptide bonds are formed. You guys are with me there, yes? What's the opposite of this process called? Yeah, hydrolysis, where you put water into the system and you break the peptide bond and you form separate amino acids. So you separate the amino acids using water to break hydrolysis. Everybody's with me there, yes? Here's what you need to be aware of. We know that protein serves 7 main functions in the human body, right? And this is review from previous units. Our cells, every single cell, is using and forming protein, breaking and making, breaking and making. The process of breaking bonds and forming smaller molecules is called catabolism. Catabolism with a C. I remember it because I'm not a big fan of cats. So catabolism, I'm going to break that down, break it apart. I don't like it. Catabolism. All right. The opposite of that would be anabolism. Anabolism, which is forming larger molecules. And the way I remember that is anabolic steroids, which can be injected in the bloodstream, help you form muscle fiber, proteins that will generate muscle fiber. Anabolic steroids, anabolism, building larger molecules. Catabolism and anabolism. They're both forms of metabolism. You guys with me? Yes? Now, it would be awesome if every time it's a clean break, a perfect little break, and you end up with 2 perfect little amino acids. Do you suppose that's how the body always functions? No. No. Sometimes this becomes a problem.
Really? That's so annoying.
Yeah, I wish it were perfect, but it's not. Sometimes you end up breaking off amino groups. Nitrogen can form more than 2 bonds. Right here it's only got 2 bonds, and it's got electrons available for bonding. And what might be in the neighborhood and available as well? Another hydrogen. Forming ammonia. Uh-oh. You guys ever smelled ammonia?
Yeah.
Okay, don't huff it, please. It's dangerous. Right? It has a nasty odor to it. It's not good for your body. It's toxic, and it will kill your cells if it builds up. So we have ammonia that's being formed when we have metabolic processes happening.
Wow, it doesn't seem like a good idea.
It's not a good idea. So we got to get rid of this
How
ammonia.
do you do that?
So what can your body do to get rid of the ammonia? Well, it converts it. If you pop off a hydrogen from a couple of ammonia and you join them to a carbon, you form this product, this molecule called urea. Urea. High concentrations of urea can also be dangerous, but it's less toxic to your cells than ammonia is in itself. So we convert metabolic waste from ammonia to urea. That urea travels through the urinary system where it exits the body in the form of urine. The difference between urea and urine. Urea is a chemical compound. Urine refers to water that's used to dilute this, and salts as well. So urine has more than just urea in it, but urea is a component of that. So this is meant to understand, what I want you to do is just stop for now and make sure we understand is, what is excretion? How is it different than elimination? And why do we need to do it? Can we answer those questions? What is excretion? The removal of metabolic waste. How is it different than elimination? Elimination is the removal of undigested food in solid form. This is liquid form, right? And it's metabolic waste. And why do we need to have this process? So we're not poisoning ourselves by making and breaking protein. All right, good. We're there. Let's talk anatomy. Yes, question?
So is ammonia the only metabolic waste that our bodies?
No, it is not the only metabolic waste. It is a primary metabolic waste. It is the main reason that we do this process, and it's what we're going to focus on.
Okay.
You can take whole courses in college on metabolism and understanding the biochemistry behind it and the reactions that go with it. But for us, we're going to keep it simple. I'm going to go to 3 boards here. The first board is going to be an overview of the urinary system. Then I'm going to expand to an image of just the kidney. And then I'm going to expand to an image of just the region of the kidney called a juxtamedullary nephron. All right, so let's first start with our urinary system. Aw, nice little heart. Right? We know how to do a better drawing of the heart from our previous unit. But for now, let's just say, these are our kidneys. This is our heart, right? Here's the basic idea. Your kidneys serve 3 roles in the human body. First, they filter your blood. Filter the blood. Second, they balance your water. That's called osmoregulation. And third, they balance your salt. Filter your blood, balance your water, and balance your salt. Salt. Alright, so that means that all of your blood needs to circulate through your kidneys because all of it needs to be filtered of waste. All of it needs to have balance. Right? So all the blood is going to eventually go through the kidneys. The main blood vessel that supplies the kidneys with the blood is going to branch out. It's called the renal artery. Renal artery. Renal is going to refer to the kidneys. So we've got the renal artery supplying blood to the kidneys. That blood gets filtered within the kidneys and then gets passed back to the heart. What type of vessel takes blood towards the heart? Veins, right? So we've got renal veins that's going to bring blood back to the heart. All right, and we're going to actually spend some time today talking about arterioles and venules. You know that arteries branch out into smaller vessels called arterioles, which connect to smaller vessels called capillaries, which then branch to larger vessels called venules, and then back to veins. We understand that circuit from our circulation. Yes. Okay. Now, the kidneys, while they're filtering the blood, they're pulling out the waste products. Those waste products have to go somewhere. So we've got a couple of regions of the kidney. The outer region of the kidney is called the cortex, the renal cortex. The word renal needs to be in front of it because the cortex refers, that's a term in anatomy that refers to the outer covering, so it's going to be more than just the kidneys. We're talking specifically about the outer section of the kidney. It's called the renal cortex. The inner section of the kidney is called the renal medulla. Right, which is different than the medulla oblongata in your brain. This is the renal medulla, referring to the kidneys, the interior section of the kidney. They're going to drain the urinary waste products to a section called the renal pelvis. Renal pelvis. Right, so that's where all the urinary products drain. Each kidney has this structure, but I'm only going to draw it in one. Now, both kidneys, from the renal pelvis, they connect to the urinary bladder. The urinary bladder which stores metabolic waste, stores urine actually. Right? And we learn to control the sphincters at the top and the bottom of the urinary bladder, right? So children that aren't potty trained don't have control over the sphincters that will keep the waste here. So they end up urinating in their diapers, right? And then you learn over time how to control that so that you can store your waste products here and at the appropriate time excrete it out of your body. The tubes that connect the kidneys to the urinary bladder are called the ureters. That's a ureter, and that's a ureter. So ureters connect kidneys to the urinary bladder, and the urethra carries the urine out of the body system. So in males, the urethra travels through the penis. In males, semen also travels through the penis. So we're going to learn in our next unit about the reproductive system. There's a gland called the bulbourethral gland that actually secretes an alkaline solution in males that neutralizes the acidic environment of the urethra so that the sperm don't die as they travel through that tube. Females have three separate points in their reproductive physiology we'll talk about. There's an anus, there's the vagina, and there's the urethra. Males have two, an anus and a urethra. Sperm travels through the urethra. We'll, again, touch more on this in the reproductive unit. Question? No? I thought you had done that. Bagel lovers? No?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, I actually did.
Okay, yeah.
It's fine.
Okay, if you think of it, let me know. I write it down if you think of it. So this is the overall anatomy that we need to be aware of. This is the big picture anatomy. Questions about the big picture anatomy? Yeah.
So does the blood, like when it's being filtered, does it, like what is the order that it goes in? You know the order of the respiratory system, but how does the filtering fit into that?
That's the third board. We're going to talk all about filtration in the third board. I probably won't get to that until tomorrow. I'll probably draw the anatomy today, but in terms of physiology and how it all works, probably tomorrow. Yeah.
I remember it. Okay, so you said children learn to control the sphincters at the top and the bottom of the bladder. Why would you need to control the top at all?
Good question. Good question. I don't know. I need to look into that. Yeah, I may have misspoken there. You definitely need to control this
Yeah.
to keep the bladder from emptying. Yeah, good question. Her question was, why would we need to control any sphincters up here? Isn't this the key sphincter? And that's right, that we do need to control this one. I'm going to look into that. Good question. Yeah?
When you have seizures, why do you have urinary incontinence?
That's another good question. Question is, when you have seizures, why do you have urinary incontinence? So I'm not medically trained, so I'm not sure of this. I would need to look. My logic would tell me that you lose control over the sphincter, right, when you have seizing, so uncontrolled muscle contraction. And so by contraction relaxation, you empty out the bladder. That's my guess, but I'm not a trained physician, so I'm not sure. All right? Yes?
There's a surgical procedure called the bilateral urethral reimplantation. Is that for the ureters or the urethra?
Good question. Don't know. Why don't you Google that one? I need to move on, actually. And that, I don't know, I'm not aware of that medical procedure. Her question was about a specific medical procedure with a very long specific name. So look it up. I don't know that one. Good question. All right? Okay, I want to move on to an expanded view. So let's take this picture of the kidney and let's blow it up so that we can have one kidney. We can talk about the cortical region and the medulla region, the medullary region. So this is the cortex. And in the cortex, you have a series of functional units that are called cortical nephrons. So the functional unit of the kidney is called a nephron. Functional meaning it's actually doing the role of the kidney. We know there's three roles of the kidney. Filter your blood, regulate salt and water. So the cortical nephrons, there's two types of nephrons. Cortical and medullary. Cortical nephrons. About 80% of the nephrons in your kidneys are cortical, meaning they remain in the cortex. They do not elongate down into the medulla. So this is our medulla. Cortex on the outside. About 20% of the nephrons in your kidney are juxtamedullary, and yet these are the ones we're really going to focus our attention on. These are the key nephrons in terms of osmoregulation. And here's why. You have layers of interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid. And they have different osmolarities. So you have regions of the kidney in the medulla that have different osmolarities. And this will help form concentration gradients in order to balance salt and balance water. There are some key ideas that we're going to learn more about tomorrow in lecture regarding countercurrent exchange, flowing in opposite directions to prevent dynamic equilibrium. Regarding permeability, remember that we talked last year about selective permeability in membranes. We're going to learn about the permeability of the urinary system. And osmoregulation in terms of osmolarity and concentration gradients. So 3 key ideas for tomorrow. Concentration gradients, permeability, and what's the third one I just said? Countercurrent exchange. Countercurrent exchange. 3 things we're really going to hit on tomorrow. All right? So, these are the cortical nephrons that remain in the cortex. The juxtamedullary nephrons actually dip down into the medulla. So they are situated such that they start in the cortex, they have a loop that dips down into the medulla and comes back up to the cortex. They are juxtamedullary. Medulla. Right? You with me in that? Yes? That's the main functional unit we're going to discuss. Juxtamedullary nephrons. So let's blow this up to a larger image. Now, I'm going to go through this in 2 ways. There's a blood system and there's a urine system. I'm going to start with the urine system. So, you have a region in these nephrons called Bowman's capsule. And I will define in more detail for you tomorrow what each part of this does. Today I want you to get the vocabulary in your head and understand how it fits together. Tomorrow we'll talk about the function of each part. So we've got Bowman's capsule, followed by a region called the proximal convoluted tubule. Proximal, what does that mean? We learned about that when we did a dissection of mink specimens last year. Proximal means near a point of reference, right? We're going to talk about that point of reference a little bit later today. This tube, right, tubule, so we've got a tubule that's proximal, tubule, and it's not traveling in a straight line, it's kind of taking a convoluted route. So it's a proximal convoluted tubule. Near a point of reference, which I'll talk about in a moment. That point of reference is called the glomerulus, and it's housed in here. Near that, not in a straight line, and it's a tube. It's going to carry our urinary waste. The direction of flow is this. So we actually end up forming, I told you that there's a dip. This dip is called a loop. Anybody know the specific name for that loop? The loop of... not the loop of death. That sounds like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
This is called the loop of Henle. Alright, and we've got our waste products flowing down, so they're actually descending. This is called the descending limb. So we have the descending limb of the loop of Henle. And then this would be coming up, and actually has a difference in diameter here, which is going to be pronounced, and we'll talk about it. We have the ascending limb. Of the loop of Henle, which leads to this section of the nephron called the distal convoluted tubule. Okay? And the last section of the urinary system we're going to need to know for this functioning unit called a nephron is the collecting duct. Collecting duct. The collecting duct is what actually filters the waste. So here's our renal pelvis. The collecting ducts from all these nephrons connect to the renal pelvis. Collecting ducts connect to the renal pelvis. So this goes, the waste travels out the collecting duct to the renal pelvis, to renal pelvis. This is the pathway of our waste products, not the blood. We're going to talk blood next. Questions about the pathway of the waste products? This is a nephron. Yeah. And this one we're going to actually call it juxtamedullary nephron because it's going to travel from the cortex into the medullary region. So this is the